Salut tout le monde, hi everyone. Today I will break down 10 French expressions native speakers barely use or don't use at all. And I will tell you what we really say instead. Let's go. The first expression on this list is comme ci comme ça. So you probably learned that this expression means so-so. And yeah, it is true, we use it every now and then. But like many expressions on this list, it's considered a bit old-fashioned. We wouldn't use it that often. Instead, there are many alternatives a French speaker would use instead. For example, we could say moyen, which literally means average. We could also say bof, which is not really a word. It's more like a sound, a bit like the English mais. Okay, so you can simply say bof. Or there are plenty of expressions that mean not great, like pas génial, pas super, pas top, even pas terrible, which literally means not terrible, which for some reason it's a bad thing in French. All right, so try those instead of comme ci comme ça, and that will make you sound way more natural. Let's move on to the next expression, voilà. This very versatile word deserves a whole video on its own, but today I will keep it simple. We do use it like English speakers do, to express either joy or pride when revealing or completing something. However, we wouldn't say it quite like English speakers do. We wouldn't use it with that over-dramatic flair, voilà. No, instead, it's better to turn it down slightly and maybe add something to it, like voilà, j'ai terminé, that's it, I'm done, or voilà le dessert, here's the dessert. You see, no need to be that intense about it. It may sound pretty cool, but this is not how we actually talk. Right, let's continue with the next one, bicyclette. Every now and then, I still hear English speakers use this word to say a bike. And I mean, I understand. It is so similar to the English word bicycle, it is as tempting as a nice glass of French wine. However, if you still use this word in 2026, you need to stop right away. I was born and raised in France, and I never in my entire life used this word. And the only person that I know who does is my grandmother. And as you can imagine, she's not exactly Gen Z. So hop on and do like the rest of us and say vélo. Nice and simple. Okay, let's continue with the next one. This one might surprise you. Parlez-vous anglais? Yes, that's right. Parlez-vous anglais? Do you speak English? If you're watching this video, it's very likely that you don't feel confident enough yet to speak French. And kudos to you if while you're in France, you want to ask the person you're talking to if they speak English. That will definitely earn you some points with grumpy French people. However, this way of asking a question is extremely formal. You see, that way of placing the verb before the subject is not something we would do in everyday life conversation. So instead, what you should do is to say vous parlez anglais. And make sure, of course, to add the right intonation so we know it's a question. Vous parlez anglais? You see, this is standard spoken French. This is how we actually talk every day. Okay, so stop saying parlez-vous anglais. It's like carrying a big sign that says, hey, look at me, I'm a tourist. All right? Now, be honest. Which one of you guys have been using parlez-vous anglais while on holiday in France? Let me know in the comments. I promise I won't judge, but please stop saying parlez-vous anglais. Right, with this out of the way, let's talk about the next word, garçon. Clichés die hard, don't they? Thank you, movie industry, for keeping them alive. But don't believe what you see in movies. Nowadays, no French person would call their waiter boy. Can you imagine that? In your own country, if you were to call your waiter boy, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't go down very well. Well, it is exactly the same thing in France. Not only has this expression become obsolete, it is also considered extremely rude and condescending to call your waiter boy. So, what should you say instead? Well, quite simply, monsieur, or madame if it's a lady, of course, or you could simply say excusez-moi or s'il vous plaît to get their attention. Oh, and one last tip from a former waiter. Don't snap your fingers to call your waiter. That would be a major faux pas. Speaking of faux pas, let's take a look at this expression. Literally in French, faux pas means false step. And like in English, we would use it to describe an inappropriate or embarrassing behavior in a social setting. But the thing is, this expression is, again, very formal. It's not something that you would hear in a normal conversation. You might find it in book, you might hear it in the media, but that's definitely not something we would use daily. Instead, a native speaker is way more likely to say something like une bourde or une gaffe, which is basically a blunder or mistake. Okay, so unless you are in a very formal situation, don't take a false step and don't use faux pas. The next expression is probably the biggest stereotype about how French people talk. Ooh la la. Now, let's make it clear. There's some truth to this cliché. We do say ooh la la or even oh la la, but not as often as you may think, and definitely without that overly exaggerated pronunciation English people sometimes give to this word. Ooh la la. You know, it always cracks me up when I hear foreigners, non-native French speakers, use ooh la la to express excitement over something fancy or, well, sexually induced. Ooh la la. Very cringy. No, me personally, in those cases, I would probably just say, wow. Yeah, wow, that's right. You steal from us, we steal from you. But the truth is, we mostly use ooh la la to express anger, frustration, or disappointment. For example, like in this sentence, ooh la la, mais qu'est-ce que tu as fait? Oh my, what have you done? Fun fact, you can actually add more las to emphasize your emotions, like ooh la 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 la. And then you know you're in trouble. So keep this in mind. Yes, it is a French expression. No, we don't spend whole day long using it, and not all of us use it, and it is rarely for something very pleasant. So please, next time you're in France and your waiter brings you a nice looking dish, please, no ooh la la. All right, with this out of the way, let's talk about the next expression, sacré bleu. Out of all the expressions we've seen so far, this is probably the only one I've never heard being used in my life, like never. Originally, this expression was used to avoid blasphemy as a substitute for sacré Dieu. Of course, nowadays we have plenty more words we could use instead. Mostly swear words, and for obvious reason, I won't list them all here. So here are a few slightly less offensive words you might hear while in France. For example, purée or punaise, which are a replacement for a much stronger swear words that I like a lot, but it's not really YouTube friendly, so I won't use it here. You could also hear mince, which is a very nice and polite way to swear. You could also hear bordel, which literally means brothel, and yes, this is a swear word in France. And of course, the one we all love, merde, which is, you know it, shit. And plenty more words you could hear if you're stuck on a strike day, in France, in an airport, or in a train station. A truly French experience. Right, let's continue with the next expression, c'est la vie. That's life. What a great expression, isn't it? I missed my bus? C'est la vie. I overcooked my pie? C'est la vie. I have 0 subscribers? C'est la vie. Now, let's get real. English speakers probably use this expression more than we do. I'm not saying that we don't use it, but not that often. And definitely not for something very trivial. For example, once, one of my students used it to talk about the bad weather. Definite overkill. So, unless you are in a very formal context, ditch c'est la vie and use instead c'est comme ça. Literally, it's like that. And our last expression today is zut, or its dramatic cousin, zut alors. This interjection is a very polite way to express annoyance, disappointment, frustration, but it's not something we use nowadays very much. You might still hear it in a few situations, though. For example, from parents who don't want to swear around their children, or from that slightly uptight lady or gentleman who still thinks it sounds rebellious. But really, it doesn't. Okay, so all the alternatives I gave you earlier about sacré bleu will work perfectly here too. Unless, of course, you're aiming for that old school teacher vibe, but if that's your thing, go right ahead and say zut alors. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now you know exactly what to say and what to stop saying. If you found it helpful, give it a like. That will really help me grow this channel. And stick around for more tips about the French language. Merci beaucoup, à bientôt, au revoir.